I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Yes, indeed. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like live. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Welcome back also, of course, to Black Power Media. Good morning and welcome as we try to hold it down until the next edition of the Remix Morning Show, which is tomorrow, Tuesday, our Monday. But you know, that's how we do. Whether you're a remixer or a mix-a-lot, we look forward to seeing you there tomorrow morning. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. Been up for hours, but I haven't been talking much. So I have to get ready to get it started. So I got a lot of actually to go over this morning. Don't have any guests today, in part, well, just some scheduling and whatever. But next Friday, when I believe we're going to be rejoined by sort of my part-time co-host Kaba Akantunde, but we're also, I think, going to be joined by, well, I'm sure we're going to be joined by Minister Server, have an extended conversation with him, part of the remix, but part of the Renegade Culture crew, largely because of something that started sort of off air, well, on and off air during the taping of the last episode of Renegade Culture, which I was happy to be a part of. Hope you saw it, and if not, please go check it out. But Minister Server talked a little bit about his own background, and because he's never really, to my knowledge, I asked, I don't think he's ever really laid out that history on Renegade Culture. I figured we should bring him over here and talk to him here, because he's got a fascinating history. So I want to get into that with him a little bit, and that'll be on Friday. In addition to maybe a couple of other things. I'm not entirely sure. We're trying to work out a visit by the god of rap. No, I'm not talking about the so-called God up there on Clear Channel Radio and video. I'm talking about the real god of rap, who just released a new extended, I guess, mini docu video. And of course, I'm talking about the Maimuna Youssef, aka Moo Fresh. I don't even know what else to say other than good Lord have mercy. Good Lord have mercy. No. But it's an incredible new release, and we're trying to work out her, the schedule. Maybe Friday, maybe we'll get her to visit the remix. I'm not sure. But speaking of new material, shout out to DC's own DJ Two Tone Jones and his crew, including Tim Hicks of Cornell West Theory. They dropped something new recently, and Tim is going to come to the remix on Thursday. So we're working on that as well, but definitely trying to relink with Maimuna Youssef. She is the god of rap, and as she self-described in the track. And anyway, so we're endeavoring to do that. No, not Rakim. Sorry, James, and good morning to you, my man. No, not the god, I suppose, but yeah, sorry for the confusion, but I am talking about Moo Fresh, aka Maimuna Youssef, who you're not way off, because in fact, that's my bad, because if it is to be expected that if you walk into the room and talk about the god, anyone of a certain age would think it's Rakim. So that's my fault. I don't think you're off at all. I think if anything, that's my poor introduction. But no, she talks about herself as the god of rap in this new track, and I think with good reason. And if we take it back to its origins, before the Greeks and all got involved with changing and rebranding the deities, the original were feminine anyway. So I always refer to God, not even to say the goddess. I'm saying God is a she, and I think Maimuna has properly reclaimed that. Anyway, but definitely good morning to everybody out there. Leah, James, David Silberg, Sounds of St. Elsewhere, Joe Nathan. Good morning to everybody. We appreciate you. Why is my, whatchamacallit, not scrolling? Anyway, Dawn Gibson, appreciate you. Thank you on the shirt compliment. Appreciate you. The Spider-Man. 7285, appreciate you. Good morning. Anyway, but we do have a number of things to go over this morning, to again hold you over to the remix and to all the other great programming coming this week. Definitely shout out to the Ear Doctor, who I didn't get to catch it all, but from what I saw with some of the discussion, looked like he did his thing, as always, on Sundays 8 p.m. Eastern. And definitely, if you're not a member, please consider joining up and or becoming a patron at the Patreon page for blackpowermedia.org, so that you can get advance an early view of what went down yesterday, which was an amazing discussion with 3 members of the Black Liberation Army, Daruba bin Wahad, Sekou Odinga, and someone very few people hear from, Thomas Blood McCreary. So please, if you were there, we appreciate you, and I know you enjoyed that. If you were not there, please check it out subsequently. And if you are not a member, since it was members only, please do get up on that membership if at all possible and check it out. And patrons should be getting access to it, if not already, I think today, over at Patreon. So please, if you're a supporter there, we appreciate you, and please go check that out. So many interesting things in that discussion, including something that I certainly was at least under aware of, which was to the extent to which, and does that count as a ways in which, the extent to which members of the BLA were not members of the BPP. Which I thought was an interesting tidbit. Anyway, there were many more gems in there. I mean, it was a fantastic discussion. It is just going to be part 1, a soldier story series of discussions. So yeah. Right on, Ricky, and good morning. Oh, I missed the first one. Yeah, that's the one. Right. I'm still in awe of it myself. And right on, James, for checking it out in the replay. And yeah, I mean, anyway, very interesting discussion about the rightward direction. Right on, Matt. Good morning. It was really good. It was really good. I feel like that's an understatement. Good morning. Yeah, that's an understatement. Really good is an understatement. And for me, it was certainly a bucket list event, something I had been wanting to do and trying to get done for a long time. I'm glad we were able to finally make it happen. Shout out to Brother Kenyatta, working in the background on that as well. So, all right, anyway, let's go through. There's a number of things that I would love to go through this morning. some things that I think we'll enjoy, have some fun with, and agree on. Some things I think we might enjoy a little less and disagree on. But I think, you know, as it, you know, it is what it is, as they say. So a couple of things, because again, I want to and shout out Freedom Archives for their prisoner newsletter. And just because I sign up and get the drops, you know, I hear, you know, stay abreast of things like this that I just want to quickly highlight a little bit about. That again, there's still an important need to keep pressure on all the so-called powers that be until Mumia and all other political prisoners are free. You like that? You like that? You like that? Talking about Maimuna got me inspired. Like that little rhyme. That's it. That's it. And right on, Mac. I see you, man. Definitely an understatement. Right on, right on. We're all in awe. I think we all need to catch up to what happened yesterday. It might be one of those things, you know, for real. It might be one of those things that we just don't appreciate what happened until much later, like the impact of it. You know, anyway. So, but anyway, Mumia Abu-Jamal's spiritual advisor confronts D.A. Krasner and the Fraternal Order Police. Just an interesting story that we'll put in the show notes if anybody wants to follow up in the SF Bayview National Black newspaper. It's an interview with Mark Lewis Taylor, who is founder of Educators for Mumia Abu-Jamal, and who is continuing to put pressure again on the DA and the FOP. Who, as Daruba talked a little bit about yesterday as well, and has been for a while. It's the police union that is the major problem, or a major impediment and an underappreciated impediment to getting our PPs out. So it's good to hear about that. So we want to encourage more of the same, and that more, at least people be aware, keep people aware of what's going on, and encourage others to get involved. Similarly, in another recent release from the PP News is this story here about what just the conditions in San Quentin. And what I appreciate about this newsletter is, and I'm certainly, you know, guilty of this, that to the extent we pay attention to political prisoners, we don't pay enough attention just in general to the conditions of those incarcerated more broadly. And on some level, I know Elaine Brown has made this point, others have made this point, that everybody's a political prisoner who's locked up, because it's the result of the political system that has people in the conditions to which they would either engage in so-called criminal activity or have the activity that they engage in be criminalized and punished in this way. And then on top of it, not only do they provide, you know, the bottom rung base for the economic ladder and labor production in this society, but the imprisoned are then, of course, you know, forced to suffer these horrific, as it says here, stories of neglect heard in hearing about San Quentin prison COVID-19 practices. A story by Jose Medina. 6 incarcerated folks and a medical doctor from San Quentin prison gave their testimonies Thursday at an evidentiary hearing in the case against the state prison and California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation during the COVID-19 crisis. And the testimony was damning. Judge Jeffrey Howard presided over the hearing in San Marin County Superior Court. We heard of the unsanitary environment, the mishandled transfer of COVID-19 infected people from California Institute for Men to San Quentin that resulted in an outbreak, poor working conditions, and mental health deteriorations of incarcerated people. Makes you wonder why there's been so many prison uprisings over the years, and why there remains so underreported and underappreciated, or even why some famous uprisings have taken place historically, even in and around, I believe, is that even the same courthouse? Is that the courthouse Jonathan Jackson ran up in? We just talked about that a little bit in a recent discussion. Please go back and check that with folks in support of Rochelle McGee. And if you were with us yesterday, you heard not only Daruba talk about this in terms of commemorating, or I think Kalanji brought it up, commemorating the Attica uprising of 1971, and something I think we will be doing some discussion and coverage of here. And then you also heard that we at BPM on Sunday of next week, I believe it's Sunday. Let me double check that. No, I think it's 2 weeks. Sunday, June 5th is when I believe it is. Yeah. Is the services for the recently passed, transitioned Romaine Chip Fitzgerald. And BPM is going to be on hand and involved in live streaming those services. So we'll be definitely keeping you updated about that as we move forward. The teas. So the teas come from Melanin Apparel. But you know what? Maybe we need to reach out to them. If me and CBS are going to be rocking so many of these, I think we need to look into a BPM sponsorship agreement with these folks before we just out here, black owned or not. You know what I mean? We need to get before we just out here giving away free. No, but it's Melanin Apparel. Although I think we should look into that though. Why not? We rock them. How much? Who is out here publicizing them more than us? And more coming too. So I don't know. Yeah. Anyway. And right, we'll be definitely talking more about this as well. Another prison strike in August for sure. See. I think we need to holler at them. You know what I'm saying? I don't know about 50%, but something. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they put a as worn by hosts of BPM on their website. Anyway. So anyway, so again, I want to just shout out the prisoner newsletter from Freedom Archives and encourage people to sign up on that. And you know, we all, myself included, need to do more in highlighting these stories and these histories, and support, obviously, as Ricky points out, the prison strikes, etc. And the struggles of those who remain incarcerated, whether politically or not. Okay, so again, speaking of alerts, yeah, I should have an Ajima shirt. Shouldn't that have shouldn't I need to actually look back into that. I thought I was supposed to have one already. Oh, that's funny, Tafari. That's funny. That's funny. That's funny. Anyway, well, I mean, you know, we should all be able to support all of this because, as we keep hearing, we have this untapped buying power, and now everybody fret none, because in addition to the buying power that we all have, we have a new Black-owned social media app, an alternative to Clubhouse that offers more than just talk. And Bean Now, the social networking app created to fix the historical. This is juicy right here. Let me make sure this is. sized to the as much as. Can you all see this well? Because I want to. This is good here. This is classic material right here. The social networking app created to fix the historical disadvantages in Black communities around the world has launched, and it's called Beanstalk, where beans talk, where beans talk. The new exciting feature allows users to create pods on the Beanstalk. Beanstalk, beans talk, where beans talk. I get it. That's well done. Create pods on the Beanstalk to have the live audio conversations about various topics with friends, family, and colleagues. The best part is that it's launching on a platform that is owned by our community. Darren Walker, CEO of Bean, says we have 3 C's that are the core values of Bean: community, communication, and capitalism. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean commerce. It is impossible to build a healthy community without owning the mediums through which we communicate. We don't have to go to Clubhouse or Twitter Space. We can host these talks and share our content on a platform that is majority owned by our community and was created for financial empowerment of our community. Now, on one level, this sounds great because I would agree in the importance of owning media, but ownership of media, and this was something that I kept running into as a problem back in the early 2000s when I was trying to engage what was called then the media reform movement, is that there is this, I think, false understanding or misunderstanding that we can change our media environment prior to assuming political power. And this is, again, something I'm going to come back to before we wrap today. But where are we going? Or as King asked, where do we go from here? Because there, I think, is a continued overemphasis on individual issues, on topic areas, on certainly a focus on ownership or representation or inclusion or diversity, but almost no discussion of about the assumption of political power, which is ultimately what is required to address all of these issues. So no, we're not going to overturn anything, whether it's media content, whether it's the distribution of wealth or anything. None of that is going to change simply by the ownership of various communication technology or media spaces or outlets or platforms. First of all, and maybe the easiest explanation of that is that ownership and representative or diverse inclusion is irrelevant if the model of ad-based control of content doesn't change. It doesn't matter who owns what. It doesn't matter the politics or the talent or the interests or the principles of the owners, of the producers, of the on-air talent, of anyone. None of that matters if the ad revenue base of media content is never addressed or changed. That's one of the tricks of this media environment, of this colonized capitalist media environment. You can have Black ownership. You can have Black woman ownership. You can have Black people on TV. You can have Black shows and Black content. Somebody asked Dr. CBS, sent her a note to have the two of us discuss the Black what's it called? The Black girl sketch comedy show, or is it Black girl or Black woman? I want to say they say Black girl, but on one of these streaming platforms, and I watched it. I binged it over the weekend, and so I don't know exactly what CBS's plans are, but I'm happy to talk about it at some point with her or whoever. But the short of it is, for me, to my point here, and so I won't, I guess, spoil any of those future conversations beyond what I'm saying here, other than to say it makes no difference how talented, how pretty, how skilled, how arrayed across the African spectrum of complexion, the on-air talent, the executive producers, the script writers, it doesn't matter. It is the ad revenue that determines content and limits the range of thought. And ad revenue, again, roughly $500 billion a year spent at this point, is controlled by a tiny handful of the largest corporations and conglomerates, hedge funds, financiers, Wall Street financiers, and they're very clear about what the ranges of content can be. And as we see here at BPM, using the YouTube, Google, AdSense analytics, we see almost on a daily basis that we are a perfect example. Look at the politics of this channel. And then look at, and maybe we'll just do this one day. We'll pull them up and just show you the ad revenue or the ad throttling that goes on our channel. Never mind all the other stuff, just the ad revenue. We're constantly being told ineligible or few to little ads will run. So as much as we want to explore that contradiction of ad-based ad revenue, generating ad revenue, we almost can't, because they keep saying we don't like your content and don't want to put ads on your channel to the extent that we would elsewhere. So anyway, that's part of the hustle here. Of course, the other part, as we'll get to in just a moment, is the claim is baseless. The claims that they make are baseless. So Bean now enables users to swipe to connect with local Black-owned businesses, network with entrepreneurs and professionals, and gain useful tools to start new businesses. Businesses and entrepreneurs benefit from increased revenues and profits. While many social media apps allow users to connect with like-minded people with common interests, Bean is the first app designed specifically to meet the economic needs of the Black community around the world. Again, so whether it's through my work specifically on buying power, or more recently the work I played a small role in contributing to with NCRC, where the report shows you yet again, businesses do not address the issue. And I even had the statistic wrong, so I need to pull it back out, because because between 1992 and 2012, more than 2 million Black businesses were created, but the total capture of national revenue by those businesses only went, I want to say went up 0.3%, but I think it's even less than that. But my point is, there was no, or I thought it went up 1%, but it only went up 0.3%. That's what I think it is. And I'll double check that. Maybe we can come back to that too. Or you can go back and watch that video where we had the discussion with all the principal contributors to that report. But the point is, and I'll put the link there in here as well. In fact, you know what? Let me just see if I can pull that up real quick, because and then I'll definitely put the link to the report back in the show notes. But and then I'm going to come back to that story. But this is the nope, that's not the one. Anyway, no. Let me do it because I want to get that stat right too. But this report, again, it's not a revolutionary document, but here's the stat I'm talking about. Black entrepreneurship greatly increased between 1992 and 2012 from 3.6% of all firms to almost 10%. Yet even with Black entrepreneurship increasing almost threefold, the proportion of Black revenue decreased from 1% to 0.5%. Also, during this time period, Black median income did not increase with Black entrepreneurship. In fact, median Black household income only increased by just over $3,500 after sharply declining in 2000 and 2007. As income climbs in recent years, revenue has continued to decline. So even when there are upticks in relative Black income, the revenue generated by their businesses declines. And there are a number of reasons for this that we can talk about. Somebody tell CBS to stop calling me and to watch my live. CBS, get your BPM notifications up. Anyway, I know she probably doing some incredibly deep work. I'm just playing. Anyway, but this is really the point I'm getting at, though. That stories like this one continue to like the one I started with and I'm coming back to now, continue to misrepresent and continue to provide the propaganda that continues to confuse. So again, I'm not mad at this brother here. This is not a personal attack on him, Darren Walker. I don't know him or his politics or what he thinks in his heart is going to happen here. But what I'm saying is his genius, his intelligence, his effort, his know-how, his whatever is all being intentionally channeled in a direction that can't lead anywhere. And then here he comes again with that other piece of the mythology that I do address in my book that I think where he says, Darren says he was inspired to create Bean after reading an alarming statistic that African Americans lag behind other racial groups in terms of upward economic mobility, despite having the 16th largest buying power globally. Now, is that, again, there's no link here because that statistic is entirely bogus. And as I talk about in the book, and as there's this great video where shout out again to Net for Freeman. This happened on his show Voices with Vision some years ago, and the video is on the channel. You can watch it, hear it. Where the head of DC's DC-based industrial bank, Black-owned industrial bank, his name will come to me, B. Doyle Mitchell, said the same thing. In fact, he said our buying power is our GDP, and then compared it to the top GDP of countries around the globe, and to come up with this similar kind of number. But it's not sourceable, and it's inaccurate. So first of all, as I talk about in the book, gross domestic product is not how you determine the economic condition of any country, because gross domestic product is a measure of all of the value of all the goods and services spent in a given year in a given community, and is a measurement of the value that accrues to the owners of those goods, of services, and products. GDP is never used by honest economists to determine, because it doesn't measure inequality within a community. So saying that Black people have the 16th largest economy is, number one, based on nothing, based on no again, the Selig Center's research says its estimates and projections, and that they have no real way of measuring the buying power of Black people or any other community. So all of that, the very base of it is entirely erroneous. But beyond that, it's fraudulent as a claim because, again, one, even by making a comparison of the GDP of different countries around the globe, doesn't say, again, as I said, doesn't measure the inequality within those countries, and it doesn't speak to the inequality. It's not a measurement of the unequal relationship those countries have with the global economy. So it doesn't, saying that Black America has a GDP the size of Mexico or whoever doesn't talk about the colonial relationship that Mexico has with international finance capital or the West. So it's not to see. So again, it conveys this false, non-existent sovereignty and power. And it is also, again, as you see here, not source. There's no link to any story here. So what is happening is that there, as they say here, there's a growing desire to support Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs from within the community. And then he claims that with this digital platform, this will help that occur. So, but as I talk about, as the NCRC report talks about differently, the involvement in Black-owned business is not something that will help the community overturn its general and unequal relationship. It is something that will only at most help a handful of Black owners of a handful of Black businesses, but mostly it helps white capital, the white corporate structure, and the white political apparatus that no longer has to worry about Darren Walker and those like him becoming part of or encouraging people become part of dangerous, threatening political movements attempting to assume political power, because all of their energy and effort will be redirected into this hopeless, persistently propagated hopeless endeavor of starting businesses to improve the condition of Black people. And I do admit, I even though I claim to understand how the system works and how this process occurs, I do admit a continued frustration at the inability to reach more of my or our intended audience with this very accurate, well-studied, proven fact, largely because of the tremendous amount of sponsored propaganda that continues, as I'm, again showing here, to ignore that reality. So even whether it's my work or the very, practical mainstream work of NCRC that proves that what these folks are claiming is false, there's almost an entire inability to reach them. All right. Okay. So I just wanted to show that one again. Now, related to this mythology, beyond, obviously, is the is this story here that I was asked about the other day, but hadn't had a chance to really look at and have since. And of course, it's very simple. Media mogul Byron Allen sues McDonald's for $10 billion over racial allegations. Now, again, on its surface, and Byron has been playing on this for decades. Okay. On its surface, you're like, wow, go ahead, brother, rock on, fists up, let's get it. McDonald's is racist. Get it. But the lawsuit was filed Thursday in Los Angeles County Superior Court by Entertainment Studios Network, Inc. and Weather Group, LLC, both which are owned by Allen, who is Black. The complaint alleges McDonald's intentionally discriminated against Entertainment Studios and Weather Group through a pattern of racial stereotyping and refusals to contract in violation of federal and state law. The complaint also says McDonald's spends less than $5 million of its $1.6 billion annual television ad budget on Black-owned media. And there it is. The complaint also says McDonald's spends less than $5 million of its $1.6 billion annual television ad budget on Black-owned media. So, and I just want to remind everybody that I mean, I just think this is it's just, But anyway, that's the this is the crux of the whole issue here, and this is what Black commercial press and media have been working and hustling for decades now on. And while they promote these economic mythologies about the potential for Black advance and success, what they're really doing is and I cover this in my book, and I show that, you know, in some of the details there as well, that that even in their announcements that they're very brash about this, but because in part because they're playing on this very you know, Black capitalist notion that when even the poorest of the Black community see some Black people getting some of that money, getting that bag, as they say, we are encouraged, or they are encouraged, to feel better. That someone else's victory, so to speak, is our victory. And the comprador class among us have been playing on this for a long time. And then they promote not only a mythology to get themselves money, but they promote an economic mythology that continues to devolve the analysis of so many in our community, to the point where a young brother like Darren Walker thinks he can create an app, or claims he thinks he can create an app that will start to solve the inequality in Black America. And then what do you get out of Byron Allen's company? Like, what do you like he gets this money, and then what do you get? You get the griot. I mean, okay. I mean, you get the griot. You get Cars TV, Comedy TV, Justice Central. What does that do? The verdict is in. So like Judge TV shows and stuff like that. Automotive TV, Beautiful Homes, Career Day, Cars, Comedy, Comedy Jam, Comics, Entertainers with Byron Allen, Fascinating People. Who's been on Fascinating People? Who's on Fascinating People? Oh, the page is not found. Uh-oh. Whoops. Global Business People, Happy Holidays America, Latin Lifestyles, Pets TV. Who Wants to Date a Comedian? We the People with Gloria Allred. That's really important for Black television. Urban Style, We Have a Dream. Recipe TV, I think I might have missed that one. Of course, you get the Weather Channel. It's important. Most importantly, from the money Byron Allen makes, you get well-funded, diverse arrays of investigative reporting, Black radical media, advocacy for new and advancing progressive political, electoral political platforms, parties, organizations, blocks. No, we get none of that. So we just get a Blacker version of what? We get to know that, I mean, what? And then Byron Allen's billions of dollars have meant what for Black people? As we just looked at, Black people collectively, business-wise, capture less of the national revenue. Black incomes even overall decrease, but even when there's a slight uptick, the revenue captured by Black businesses doesn't go up. And at most, it's only 0.5% of all the revenue generated in this country goes to Black business. And it's not because Black people don't start businesses, as the report goes on to show. It's because of a number of different reasons. The sectors where businesses can grow and make the most money are blocked off to Black people, are consolidated in ownership, access to capital and revenue to start and grow businesses is hampered by a whole set of reasons that are discussed in the paper and beyond. Anyway, but the point is that so I mean we just get more of the silliness of the silliness. All right, so I just wanted to share a little bit of that. We can maybe I'll come back to that. I'll come back to the comments in a little bit, or I'll check back and we'll see. So one other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about also this morning, just to find really another excuse to shout her out, Dr. Joy James. She'll be coming to this platform sooner than later, in advance of the June 12th summit on accountability that will be broadcast here 2 to 4 p.m. June 12th, where we'll be with activists, mothers of victims, Dr. James herself, of course, for a discussion on accountability, which I think is really important, given how there's this concern and constant argument over what leadership emerges, how it is defined, and what it claims to do in as spokespeople for all of these victims and their families. But it also reminded me, and I went back and listened to her interview earlier this year with Dev Springer, who, again, shout out to them, who was on with Dr. CBS this past Friday. A very dope discussion. But in their discussion with Dr. James, sort of to the point I was getting at with Byron Allen or Brother Walker or whoever, and this question of where do we go from here? She, in this discussion about guerrilla intellectuals with Devin Springer, Dr. James said something about this sort of incessant need to continue to come back to working with the Democratic Party that we're encouraged to. And she said, you can't dance with the devil and come back with 2 feet. And she said, I still have my 2 feet and intend to keep them. And she asked the question in that interview, or posed the point in that interview, that those who want to continue to bring us back to that formation, that Democratic Party formation, really do need to do better to explain why or how they're justifying that. So I wanted to bring that up in relationship to the anniversary of the George Floyd protests, which took place this past weekend, Sunday, and also over this weekend, the protests in DC and elsewhere in solidarity with Palestine. And I only mention it, nothing deep to say, but I only mention it and bring them up in conjunction with one another because really I just want to continue to pose a question to BPM and our crew here. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and go out of my proposed order because I think this segue actually works, since I mentioned Dev Springer. And then this question of moving beyond protests, where Joy James criticizes our constant being brought back to the Democratic Party. And then I'm looking at the protests this weekend and having been to a number myself over the years, and wondering, well, where are we going with all this? If James is right that and I think she is, that so much of all this energy is constantly encouraged right back to the Democratic Party as a solution, as a political outlet for redress of all these concerns, how is this going to work? Because at some point, we can't just be protesting in the street. At some point, we can't just be having another rally. At some point, we can't just be, I mean, the same things over and over and over and over again. Even before I had sort of philosophically checked out, and this is something we can come back to, I don't want to belabor the point now, of these marches and rallies. Even when I was there, I had stopped saying, along with the crowd, no justice, no peace. That was one chant I refused to continue to say, because I never felt more disingenuous in my life. Because what do you mean by that? So when I heard it being chanted over the weekend again, what do you mean by that? And I'm not encouraging anything. I don't want to be misrepresented here. But what I am saying is we can't just keep saying no justice, no peace. And the absence of peace is only another march or another rally for which many get a permit and do it on a Sunday and do it, you know, in an uninterrupted way. And then everybody goes home, goes to get their coffees and goes to get their, you know, I mean, so in terms of electoral politics, that's why I want to continue to argue that we developed this after party idea, this Malcolm X voter idea, that because in terms of overt discussion, I think we have to be able to engage the electoral political discussion in a very different, militant way. Other stuff has to be dealt with off the record in organized spaces without mics, cameras, and phones. Which leads me, so I'll leave that there for now. But so I'm going to skip to this part here because it leads me to another Dev Springer production on groundings that I went back and listened to. Because of the reposting of this sister's article on Black Agenda Report, Annie Olaloku Tariba, or Annie Tariba, as I've heard her described. And I reached out to her because, as I said, and we'll talk about here, I don't agree with her argument here, or Dev's for that matter. So, but I've invited her to come on, and I think we're going to work that out. I don't think she could join me this morning, so I'm just going to start here because I was, you know, thinking about it and lining it up anyway. So, but I went back. So this was actually published originally in 2018. Black Agenda Report republished it again this last week. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, at least in these spaces lately, of a critique of Frank Wilderson's work and my, you know, sort of engagement with that work, and Afro-pessimism in general. But the one point, the segue I'm making here is that in the discussion with Annie Tariba, Dev makes the point that one of their criticisms of Afro-pessimism is that Frank and Afro-pessimists say that they don't have a specific prescribed solution. They're only trying to raise a problem and offer a problem for discussion that maybe has no solution. They certainly don't have a solution. And that this is a problem, particularly for activists engaging the struggle and what has become popularly described as Afro-pessimism or anti-Blackness, and or focus on anti-Blackness, etc. But I think in terms of public overt discussion, so what I'm saying here is that I don't agree with that criticism, because I do agree with Frank and others who would say, look, I don't have the answer. I don't have the exact solution. I say it all the time. I think in many ways it's the most appropriate thing to say publicly, especially if you've spoken to Frank privately or read incognito or spoken to others in private settings. There are discussions that are just not appropriate for these spaces. So it would be inappropriate. I won't speak for him. It would be inappropriate for me or others to say in certain cases what we may think should be the specific course of action that is taken. It would be inappropriate. So that specific criticism is one I definitely disagree with in terms of what Dev and Annie were saying. That I don't think, I don't think an academic or even an activist or just a thinker, I don't think you have to have all of your solutions lined up as you raise questions for consideration. I think, in fact, when people say that, it's a bogus argument. Well, if you don't have an answer, then I don't want to hear the question. If you don't have a, and I don't see it as being that different from even what Marxists say. Adapt Marxism to your specific setting and context and make a revolution happen. They don't always have to say, we know it's going to happen this way, or this is exactly what you have to do. Or in fact, Marxists say you can't do that. You can't be dogmatic and say you have to do X, Y, and Z to get A, B, and C as a result or whatever. So anyway, that was one thing. There are a number of other things that are done in this article and in that discussion with Dev that I think misrepresent what I understand to be what Frank is arguing. And since he's made sort of the centerpiece of this, and it's him and his work that I know, up to a point at least, because again, my interaction with Frank, as I said to Annie and others, is I have not read his latest book, at least not fully or closely enough. I've not read or understood fully or closely enough a number of his work. Other than Incognito, that's the only book that I've really read. And then in our conversations, which Annie cites one of them, that's been transcribed all over the place and is constantly misrepresented, as I'm going to say here in just a minute, again, by our dear comrade Dev and Annie. And I haven't looked at the comments yet, so I'll get to them. So just, hold on. I don't want to be distracted. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point that there are a number of different things that I think she does in this article and in that discussion with Dev that I think that I would like us to continue to discuss. One, I think, just writ large, generally speaking, I think one of the problems that I don't think has been put out clearly enough, at least in the discussions that I've seen around a critique of Afro-pessimism, is that what I think is really the issue is that a lot of the critics don't like that it's ultimately a race-first analysis. So I think more has to be done openly to acknowledge that folks don't want a race-first analysis, and just broadly, and that needs, and that part of the discussion needs to be brought up again. And they may be right, but I don't think that that's been made clear enough. There's another obvious problem also that I think has been made clear enough, which is that a lot of the criticism and the defense is personal. So my defense of Frank, or my feeling like I want to defend Frank, is more personal than it is about Afro-pessimism. Only because I know Frank. I've engaged with Frank over the years a number of times. He's been nothing but, a good brother as far as I'm aware. I'm hearing a whole bunch of other things from other people, but it's all personal or unsourced. So I'm trying to, I got to try to focus with the work. So when, a lot of, what goes on in his personal life or what he's done elsewhere, I might not either, agree with, be comfortable with, or know about. But I think that that's largely irrelevant, especially when that's not what people put on the table when they offer these criticisms, even though I know that off the record, a lot of it is just personal. People just either don't like him or they don't like whatever. And that's one way or another. That's fine. But it's not, okay. All right. One of the things that Annie says in her piece here is that Wilderson and Jared Sexton relegate the dynamics of exploitation as incidental to Blackness. And one of her points is that unlike Marxists, Afro-pessimists seem to think that regardless of condition or context, anti-Blackness is just it. And this is a point that maybe I'm misunderstanding in her piece. This is why I want to bring her on. But I've seen this version of an argument made against Frank before, and I just don't understand it, because in Incognito and in our discussions and in whatever other work I've somewhat engaged, I'm not seeing this argument made. So I haven't read Jared Sexton's work that much either. But in our interactions, and this is where I struggle with this interpretation, I don't understand how they reach that conclusion. to summarize my interpretation, the point is not that anti-Blackness is occurs absent a context, but quite the opposite. But that the contexts of enslavement and colonization and exploitation have created an intractable anti-Blackness. By the way, I don't know how much we have to break this down too, because I don't understand why those who would have a problem with Afro-pessimism would not have the same problem with critical race theory. Because from what I understand, that basic point is the same. Derek Bell made the same point. That's what I thought he was saying. But people don't accuse Derek Bell of being a pessimist and not wanting to engage in struggle or solidarity. He just said that there is this intractable anti-Blackness. So anyway, I'm happy to get, look, like I asked Dr. Peter Hudson, I don't even understand necessarily why people want to use racial capitalism and colonialism or internal colonialism is just not sufficient. Like, I don't see why I don't even know why so when people want to say, Wilderson and others want to create Afro-pessimism to create some new label they can take credit for and some new, tag or whatever, the new lane to drive in, maybe, and that's okay. But everybody seems to do that. Dr. CBS just praised Molefi Asante the other day on her show. Cool. But he was accused of doing that with Afrocentricity. Du Bois used the word Afrocentric in 1962. Dr. Clark condemned Molefi Asante for creating Afrocentricity when this body of African-centered work had already been in existence and argued. So, I mean, I don't, but we're not saying, oh, Molefi, well, some aren't, at least some are saying Molefi is descendant. So I don't know, but that's something anyway. By the way, right. Okay. All right. To the previous point, Annie, then she also quotes Fanon in contradistinction to Frank Wilderson in these little epigraphs. So she quotes Fanon as saying, to educate man to be actional, preserving in all his relations his respect for the basic values that constitute a human world is the prime task of him who, having taken thought, prepares to act. In contradistinction, to make the point that Frank and Afro-pessimists don't want action and don't want engagement, she quotes him as saying, so I think that what I have to offer is not a way out. What I have to offer is an analysis of the problem. I don't think that's fair selection of quotes to juxtapose, and I don't think it's a fair reading of Frank's work. Frank refers to Fanon all the time, albeit admittedly, I think she rightly critiques Frank for over emphasizing black skin, white masks, and not Toward an African Revolution or even Wretched of the Earth or other texts. I think that's legit. But she does that to make the point that he's encouraging inaction. And I don't get that from his work, or certainly don't get that from his interviews. I don't see how you can read Incognegro and be thinking he's encouraging inaction. I don't think you could read or hear our interviews and think he's encouraging inaction. So juxtaposing those two quotes to try to flesh out an argument is, I think, unfair. And without going through the whole piece here, I think that she does this to sort of set her frame so that she can selectively pull out, as we all do. I mean, we all, when making our arguments, we all ultimately are selecting what we think we need to make our argument, because you can't obviously quote and read everything all in the same space all at the same time, even when you're writing long books. But I think that she does that to set up this article, which is why I think when she starts her piece by talking about the brutal killing of a Muslim family, to suggest, as I'm going to come to here, that Frank and others are arguing that an anti-Blackness that is claimed by Afro-pessimists is somehow creating the oppression Olympics and encouraging the oppression Olympics and saying that no other group suffers, or certainly no other group suffers like Black people. And I think that's disingenuous on a whole number of levels. Like, you know, how many other attacks could she have pulled out where Black families have suffered an attack? I mean, she could have done the same thing. She could have pulled out examples when Arab or Muslim communities attack Black communities here or elsewhere. Would that be fair? Maybe, maybe not. But she did. She pulled out the one example of a Muslim family suffering a white supremacist brutal attack here to make the point that when Frank and others argue there's a particular anti-Blackness that African people suffer, that it's unduly creating disunity and a lack of solidarity when we should be trying to build the opposite. And I don't get that in his work. In other words, he's not saying no other group suffers. And in fact, in conversations with, you know, people have highlighted the one irreconcilable Blackness interview, but we've done so many that are at imixwhatilike.org. Now, I admit I have not read his work as much as I've had these conversations, but I'm just trying to say that in these conversations, you don't get any of this. So you don't get, for instance, even the one where Nura Erakat quoted a couple weeks ago in our interview where he says, you know, we'll support the Palestinians and then we're going to come after you too for your anti-Blackness. I agree with that. I don't see how that's a lack of solidarity. And I'm not, and it's not, and in fact, it's not even a call to inaction. It's simply saying we're going to work with you, and then we got to deal with what you got to deal with. And in the same way, I hear everybody else, the Black community appropriately saying we're going to get ourselves free, and then we got to deal with some issues of class, gender, sexuality. Okay. So I think that's a misreading. It's similarly a misreading because then I also don't understand. Well, then are we saying then that the basis of Garvey's efforts are entirely wrong? And if we are, that's cool. But I think that needs to be laid out too. Why isn't Garvey and the entire race first wing being attacked as much as Frank? Because Garvey started his whole thing. Everywhere he went, the darker the people were, the more they suffered. So it's not to say others don't suffer. So when Annie brings out the example in her interview with Dev of the Irish, or sure, it's not to say that the Irish don't suffer, but it is to say, I think it is to say that if there were Africans in Ireland, or if there are Africans in Ireland, I don't know to what extent there are, they are going to be getting the worst of the worst. That's all I think. So I'm not really. By the way, in the interview with Dev, they completely misrepresent his argument that is in the interview with me that Annie does cite in this article. Frank absolutely does say we will support the Palestinians and then deal with them and their anti-Blackness. In the interview with Dev, they both recount it as Frank saying we shouldn't be in solidarity with Palestinians. That's not that. So that is just a factual, a total backwards inaccuracy of that particular argument. They go on to critique Frank's use of social death. And I know that Orlando Patterson has scoffed at Frank's use of his original concept of social death. I don't know Orlando Patterson's work well enough. I've read some of it. I've read some of Frank's argument, but I think it's fair to say if Patterson says Frank is misusing it, so be it. When Dr. Carr went on Karen Hunter's show and misrepresented my buying power argument, I felt the kind of way and wanted to say so. And I think people should defer to me just on GP. If you haven't actually read the work and heard how it was misrepresented in that interview, simply for the fact, as I'm saying about Patterson, it was my concept. So if Patterson says my social death concept is being misused by Wilderson, I'm gonna take him at his word until I've maybe done the kind of work I would need to do to disprove it. And that's all I'm saying about the buying power thing. It's my work, it's my argument. Don't tell me I'm wrong. Don't tell me I'm misrepresenting my own argument unless you do the work to show that I'm wrong, which was not done clearly in that interview. It was just misrepresented. So anyway, but I think equally Annie and Dev in this case misrepresent what Frank is saying about social death. So I'm happy to talk to both of them about this. Hope to, maybe we, would love to. In other words, Frank isn't now. They argue in their discussion that Frank was saying that because Black people are socially dead, that it's a wrap. That Black people are constructed as socially dead. That Black people can't. There's nothing Black people can do, and it should just be. That's not what I think he's saying. That's not how I interpret what Frank is saying, and that's not what I've ever heard him say in conversations with us. That the social death is an attitude ascribed to Black people by white society and other non-Black people who accept the sort of colonial white definition or mandate of society and its definition of Black people as being outside of humanity. He's not saying we should accept that. He's not saying, I've never heard him, or I've never interpreted to say that I should accept myself as socially dead because some cracker who knows. It's like, who picked up the reference to that? Put it in chat. See if I put the reference. And did you know that dude became a cop? The late great Bruce Dixon told me that. He knew all them cats from Chicago. He said that dude became a cop. How about that? That's wild, boy. Well, so did Ice-T and all his, well, not every, anyway, you know what I'm saying. Anyway. No, but the actor in real life did. That was wild. No, but I'm saying, so he's not saying that we should accept ourselves as socially dead. He's saying we should acknowledge, or we need to recognize intellectually or ideologically that's their perspective. So I thought that was misrepresented in there as well. They also, Dev and Annie, dismiss Afro-pessimism as a neo-identity politics. And I really struggle with that. So what is the argument then? That African people should not have an identity politics? Isn't the movement to identify as African, as New African, an identity politics, but the most radical militant form of identity politics? Shouldn't we all have a level of identity politics? All identity is political. So shouldn't we have a politics about it? But then are we saying that Black Alliance for Peace is identity politics? Because we know Ajamu Baraka doesn't agree with Frank. And how is Black people continuing to recognize how they are treated in every setting around the world somehow some sort of negative neo-identity politics? I really was struggling with that one. And that's why I went back to listen to, because even as Annie and Dev criticized Frank for the heavy lifting, the heavy intellectual lifting you have to do to read their work, which is true. Which is why I keep saying I don't know if even what I've read, other than Incognito, which was very clear. Other than that, I don't know what I've read from Frank I fully understand, because I've even had to call him once, but I was like, are you criticizing Haile Garima in Red, White, and Black? Or Red, White? Yeah. Did I read that correctly? And by the way, that's what I think is also behind Greg Thomas's critique of Frank Wilderson. Because Greg is like this with Haile Garima. So I know that when Greg read that, because Greg is smarter than me, so I know when Greg read that, he didn't have to call Frank. He knew that was hate immediately and went to defend his boy. But he doesn't say that, though. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, in part, my defense of Frank is personal. I know some of Greg's attack of Frank is personal in defense of Haile Garima, but he's not going to say that, or he didn't in that piece. And he don't talk to me anymore, so I don't know. But somebody else can ask him to see what he says. You know what I mean? Yeah, buddy. Anyway, so I don't know. I don't understand that. The other thing I don't agree with Annie in this piece. First of all, I don't agree with Annie or Dev in this piece when they keep referring to Angela Davis as a standard bearer of radicalism. I don't think I can't. I don't see that as the case anymore. Same thing with and I would need to learn more about what she's doing with the reference to Keeanga Yamada Taylor in the piece also, because she references her in saying that there's been an attempt to deny the Black radical tradition in recent histories, but I've almost felt like, and I didn't read it closely enough, so but I almost felt like that was what Taylor was doing in her work about Black Lives Matter. That Black Lives Matter is itself, as Daruba and others just said yesterday, is a suppression of the Black radical tradition. Yet Annie refers to Taylor in this piece as positively, so she says here, the radical politics of the 1960s has been recast within the anti-racist frame, the genesis of a new left from which identitarianism can ostensibly trace its roots. This is no accident. As Keeanga Yamada Taylor stressed, there has been a concerted effort on the part of the political establishment to obscure the history of the last era of Black insurgency in the U.S. I find that a very interesting, coming from her, I find that to be very interesting, because again, I don't see that being reflected in her arguments, not in her public defense of voting for Biden, and her public intellectual interviews on Democracy Now! Or elsewhere, or even what little I read in her Black Lives Matter book. I don't see that being, I don't see the reflection of that tradition in the movements that they support. So again, maybe this is the frame. Maybe there is a political, for some of these critics, there's a starting point that where we don't agree, that I would like to talk more about. By the way, I've invited Professor Taylor to the program on a number of occasions, and we've never gotten anywhere. So I don't want anybody to think. And just be clear, I may disagree with these folks. I don't have any personal issues with these folks. I don't think these people are the enemy. I don't have any problems. Dev in particular, I think is an incredible, we just disagree, I think, on this. And I'm sure when I get to the chat, there's going to be others that I respect that I disagree with here as well. So, but I want to have the discussion. And I don't see us discussing across radical camps enough. There's a lot of camping going on, a lot of clicking going on, and we're supposed to be building some movements and some threatening efforts here. And I will not, and I don't accept that Frank's work is somehow inhibiting that, and that the work of certainly Keeanga Taylor and Angela Davis currently is representing those traditions in the best ways either. So I'm not just going to be like, I rock with them over. I'm not doing that either. So. But I think we just need to have more conversations. I don't think they're happening. And in that interview with Dev and Annie, I don't recognize any of what they were talking about in terms of their description of Frank's work. So then she goes on to say, by the way, as I mentioned, she states that Annie in that interview with Dev states it precisely backwards from what Frank says in his interview with me about our support for Palestinians. They said that we shouldn't, Annie and Dev suggested that Frank said we shouldn't support Palestinians because they are anti-Black. That's exactly the opposite of what he said. He said we should support them and then address their anti-Blackness subsequent to getting them off from under the boot of Israel. I mean, that's just a direct misrepresentation of his argument in that wing of their discussion. So, and then lastly, that I have here, Annie says that one of the problems with Afro-pessimism is that it suggests, as she says, that Black people are the exclusive targets of the state. Now, that is also wildly misrepresentative of what I understand to be Frank's Afro-pessimistic argument. He has never said that black people are the exclusive targets of the state. He has said that that they are a particular target, or their targeting is particular to that of the state. And so I would like to hear more about what Annie or Dev or them both think is justifies that claim, or that the claim that he does actually make. Not that black people are the exclusive target of the state, but that black people are particularly targeted by the state. I'd like to see how they make how they claim that argument is false, because I don't think that she does it in this piece here, and they didn't do it in the interview that I went back and listened to last night in preparation for this morning. But again, I think so. I'm beginning to wonder if some of the critiques are more personal or personality based, or are themselves based on misreadings or misinterpretations of what is said. Given the interview that I did with Frank, or that we did with Frank, that has been so widely distributed, I'm beginning to think that there's a major problem with it being read or heard out of context, or not in full, or not carefully enough. Because there were a number of misrepresentations that I'm referring to just in this discussion here this morning, that I think would need to be addressed. So anyway, I've reached out to Frank as well. Again, I don't know, honestly, I'm not sure what the situation is with his health, with his time, with his interest in any of this. In her interview with Dev of a couple of years ago, this is a couple of years ago when they taped that interview. But this article, which just was reprinted in Black Agenda, was the source of the interview so that's why I'm saying that, Annie says that Frank didn't want to engage her in debate because she doesn't address his argument about the libidinal economy, which is essential to his point. So I don't know what his interests are and all of that. So I'm not here as a spokesperson for Frank. I don't know that I'm, that he would want me to do that, or that I'm qualified, but I just felt like, and again, since something I was involved in producing keeps getting brought up, not always with proper attribution, by the way. Like, my name is not on that link there. Like, my name is not in the work cited there. So somehow the interview, that when you find the link, you see that it's my interview, and that with Dr. Haight and Dr. Burroughs, but you see that that's our interview. So I don't know why it's not listed there as that, but anywho, oh man. Anyway, so look, I'll stop there on this point. And I do have a couple other things to get to, but before we move on, let me see if there are any, if there's anything that I missed that I can address here in the chat, or if somebody has a particular comment or question that I missed, please, okay, right on. I know that you all are smarter than me. I have no problem with that. There are African people in Ireland too. So are they chilling? Are they somehow doing better than the Irish? I doubt it. And I admit, I don't know anything about the African population in Ireland. What's wrong with I'm saying, I thought it was a great conversation. I was excited when people started hitting me up to get permission to transcribe and republish it. But it lately has been causing me, no, I'm just saying, it's been popping up in a lot of criticism. And I think people are not reading. I don't understand. And it may just be that I don't understand, but that's why I want to have the conversation. That's why I reach out to everybody. That's why I invite them on. And again, I don't want to, well, yeah. So, Craig, I'm not sure what part you were talking about here, that's not what Frank said. And I'm sure that the anti-blackness in the Palestinian community is hella overstated. Well, actually, I'm not sure of that. But my only point would be that what was said of Frank in an interview with us is not correct. He never said, yeah, Bruce Dixon rejected Afro-Pessimism, and I argued with him about this too, and I didn't think he was right on it either, and Bruce didn't read it carefully. All due respect, rest in peace. I love Bruce to death. And I was closer to Bruce probably than anyone else at Black Agenda Report, particularly at the end of my time there. So I mean, I'm not saying I was closer to him than they were. I'm saying I was closer to him than I was with anybody else there, particularly at the end of my time there. So, but we disagreed on a lot of stuff, including this. But all due respect, rest in peace to Bruce Dixon, man. That was a good dude, man. He was a good dude, man. He wasn't always right. Someday I'm sure somebody's gonna say that about me. He was a good dude. He wasn't always right, but he was a good dude, man. And I think this is a legit point too. I haven't read all of the work, and this was actually a point. So one of the reasons is that Annie said that one of the reasons she talked about him was because he prominently, he puts himself out there more than others, which I think is true. I've also come to learn over the last couple of weeks that there are a lot of people who are suppressing their own support and work around Afro-pessimism because of the backlash that they get within the academy, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know about that. So when Annie and Dev were in their discussion saying that AP is sort of taking too big a space in Black studies, that's not what I'm hearing or seeing even. And some who might become prominently associated with AP don't want to be because they don't want the criticism, and they don't want it to be. They don't want to. What they feel is will hurt their career. And I just had a conversation with two people on that the other day. So I find that interesting. But Frank, on some level, I mean, some have argued he wants the attention and therefore gets it. But on the other hand, he publishes books and then does lectures and media on it. So what is that supposed, what is anyone supposed to do when you write a book? Anyway, and if he is I don't care. And if he is media hungry, so what? I mean, I don't know to what extent that has anything to do with the work, but I think that is why he gets so much attention. And for me personally, and that's why I'm saying, I'm admitting my almost, personal defense or interest in this is around, defending him personally, not so much defending Afro-pessimism, because I can't. I can only defend a little bit of his work and his interaction with me and us on as that work goes, and it doesn't. I don't think it's being represented accurately. Yeah. Anyway, it is an identity politic for Black people of a certain class at this moment. Okay. All right. Maybe. What was my nice try? What was my nice try? Yeah, please restate that. Afro-pessimism challenges the notion of Black identity itself. That's what I thought it was doing, because it was saying that the Black identity is socially dead and they wanted to challenge that. That's what I thought. Oh yeah, no, don't even. I'm not even advocating that anybody see Lee Daniels anything, but certainly not Spook. Definitely go see the original and read the book too. You think it's me? Black people shouldn't have an identity in order to try to humanize everyone. I might have missed something. I'm not sure what you're saying is me. What is Pan-Africanism then? Again, I'm not sure what, but that was my thought too. I thought Pan-Africanism was a radical identity politics. Devin doesn't imply what in any way. What are you saying I got wrong, Ricky? He doesn't see that as the case anymore either. What? I did mention how old that podcast was, and I mentioned that. Are you paying attention? I did mention how old the podcast was, and I said I went back and listened to it in connection with Annie's article, and in fact, Annie in her piece. Annie in her exchange with me said that she does want to talk about what may have changed since that piece was written. But as I started with, I said Afro-Pessimism keeps getting brought up with for critique, including a piece that I contributed in terms of this interview with Frank, or we contributed in terms of this interview with Frank. And Black Agenda just posted the interview the other day. So I did mention how old it is, and that's why I brought it back up. Oh, and by the way, Ricky, did you pay attention to last Open Intellectual Friday? Go watch it again and tell me that I'm bringing up old stuff. Yeah, man. Yeah, nice try, Ricky. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, yeah, I don't think. Dev, are you here? Is he here? He is here. I don't even agree with all the parts of the criticism anymore. Okay, cool. All right, I'm either. Let me just. All right. Anyway, but my point is, Black Agenda posted the joint again, and folks keep hitting me up about all the problems they have with AP and Frank. So, anyway, looking forward to Annie coming on. Dev, I keep reaching out to you to come on or to do something more. I don't want no smoke, but y'all don't either. Yeah, buddy. Let me stop. You know what? I've been watching so much of this dude. I don't want to stop mimicking him. But I've been watching so much of this that I let's use this. Let's use my almost slipping into form. So I have been going down this rabbit hole, and I hope you all are catching at least some of this and not having it, to the extent that you do catch it, not having it be washed away by the performance and the cartoonery and the dismissiveness and what is maybe a point. So I need to reshare that because I got to play the sound for a little bit. Kwame Brown, 2001 #1 draft pick, coming right out of high school, drafted by the Washington Wizards. Career didn't go the way many people would have expected a #1 draft pick to go. And he's been dragged for 20 years. I've been watching it. And I've always thought he got it worse than he deserved. But in this recent back and forth with Charlemagne the God and Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson and Stephen A. Smith and Jamel Hill and whoever else, he keeps making these really important points. Now he goes on these rants. He's got a lot of funny light skin and mixed jokes. I'll give him that. They're funny. And Matt Barnes, I think, deserves a good number of them. Or he at least in the dozens, in the world, in the context of the dozens, he deserves them. Frankly, personally, we should talk about some of this too. The colorism, and even we need to come back and have more conversations about what I think of the what have become the changing relationship of the so-called mixed Black community to the Black community. We need to come back and talk about some of that too. But the jokes are still funny. I got to give him that. I mean, he has developed some skill with this over the years. But there's this one point, this one clip, or this one point he keeps coming back to that he makes in this clip. I want to play here just quickly. And he shouts. The point of this, he's shouting out Jalen Rose for being one of the few media personalities to speak honestly and accurately, to make the point that there are no busts in the NBA. If you make millions of dollars and get drafted in the NBA, you're not a bust if you don't become, just because you don't become the best player ever. But anyway, check this part out, because what he says here, among some other things, I think is really important.
Fuckers are some woulda, coulda, shoulda ass niggas. Look at Stephen A. He made sports. He would have made it. He think in his head he should have made it. He could have made it, but nah, he got his motherfucking coach fired. You gonna get this mama's cooking. Why was they sending this son of a bitch to college campuses? Y'all watched a modern day. It was all about money. I'm not gonna use that word, but I know what it is. It was all about money. Those colleges were losing money. This is bigger than Kwame Brown. Y'all Black sons, mama's cooking was just spraying. There was 5 guys in the NBA draft out of high school my year. There were going to be another 15 or 20 the next year. And then it was going to keep going worse and worse and worse. And you know what they said? Oh, hell to the no. The college is going to lose money. So they demonized everybody in my draft class. They demonized me especially. And now they got you motherfuckers so fooled, like they care about the development of these players, and they taking them down to the G League, just making more money out their bitch ass, slowing down their contracts to better contracts. Once they hit that G League, that ain't the same as a motherfucking NBA. They found the way to stop mama's cooking. I'm telling you. Your sons that gonna come out of high school, they're gonna send their ass to the G League 3, 4, 5 years, and you might not never see them on the NBA floor. All of this was about money. I remember the day I flew to LA. Next thing you know, TMZ run up on me. And they asked me a bunch of questions. I said, I don't give a fuck about all that you talking about. I said, listen here, why would you not let kids come out of high school? That's free enterprise. You can give them a gun to go fight a war over some shit. You don't tell them what they're killing people over, but then they can't go make money to put their mama on a golf course so they can get their mamas cooking at a golf course.
So that was at least in this part, the only part I wanted to highlight. But as some of you have noted, he makes a number of other good points as well, including their support of the Democratic Party. And I know he's got some right wing. I think he supported Trump and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not but that doesn't mean that what he said about the Black people in the Democratic Party wasn't correct, that they just want to support the Dems and provide talking points and money for and all of this stuff. So this is Kwame Brown. Again, he was a 2001 #1 draft pick to the Washington Wizards, who has been getting dragged for 20 years for being a quote unquote bust. And the reason I've been watching and going and paying attention so much lately is because of this. Not only because I admit that again, I felt sorry for him for a long time. I thought he's been unjustly done for a long time. I did used to follow sports more closely, and at the time I was paying more attention to him and Jordan and the Wizards and all that kind of stuff. Even went to see the last NBA game I went to. I think the only one in a long time, but the last one I went to was when Jordan was with the Wizards, and I wanted to see him play live. Won the same, but he did drop 55 in an overtime win against the Pacers, which was impressive. But But Kwame Brown has been coming back to say, look, man, you stop, all of you bringing my name up again, even 20 years later, as the historic biggest bust in NBA history, as a talking point for your podcasts and your TV shows. He's been saying, you all have been making a career working for white corporations, talking bad about black teenage boys and young men, and destroying their capability. He talks in detail about how his contract valuation went down just because of all the talk around him being a bust, despite his numbers being equivalent to other players who got bigger contracts. And in this point here, he's saying that he was automatically a threat to the business model of the NCAA and college basketball, because he was representing at the time a higher number of high school players coming straight out and going to the league. And that in the draft, he came out, I don't think it was 5, I think there were 3 in the first round, and another in the second round or something like that. But my point is, there were more high school players coming out, and it was going to be seen as a threat to this billion-dollar business known as the NCAA. So then what I went and did yesterday was went back and watched again something I once started to make a commentary about, but never did. But is relevant for here because it's this documentary called The Scheme. And if you haven't seen it, it came out, I think, last year or the year before. And it's a great documentary that features this guy here, Christian Davenport, who was and it's a fascinating documentary and story. And what it does is it talks about how Christian was working for a sports agent, and he was basically set up by the FBI and made into the main villain in a scheme to buy college players, to pay off, really to bribe college coaches to get them to send or to get players to sign certain shoe deal contracts, or to get them to certain teams maybe, but primarily for shoe contracts in this multi-billion-dollar industry with not only the NCAA, but all these major sports apparel brands. And the model, of course, is the players are amateurs. Only the coaches and the execs and the NCAA itself can make billions of dollars. Only the licensing agreements with shoe deals, only the shoe companies can make the bulk of the money, and the players, particularly while they're in college, can't get paid. So Christian was not only he was set up. It's a longer story, but he didn't do what he was being accused of doing, but he was set up by the FBI and forced out of his career in sports management. And as the documentary shows, while he's awaiting his federal charges through the bribery in sports, he walks over and becomes an A&R, or, well, actually he gets his own label, but it's really a glorified A&R for Atlantic Records. So my point in all of this is that what Kwame Brown is pointing to is the same thing that Christian Davenport was pointing to, and why Christian Davenport was himself targeted and punished, because as a member of the colonized community looking to become an intermediary middleman of sorts and to make money for himself and his community in that colonial relationship, he has to be punished. Kwame Brown, unwittingly trying to go straight from high school into the league, was representing a threat to that same NCAA business model, that same colonial relationship where people can go to the black community and extract the raw materials that they need and turn them into manufactured products for shoe companies and college and professional sports. And once you interfere with that, you have to be removed. So in the documentary, Christian Davenport describes the competition for players as a blood sport. And that if you can get your hand on that number one pick, it's like having a lottery ticket, which is why they call it the lottery, or why they should be calling it the lottery, because it's really like having a lottery ticket for the community in the hopes that you get yourself out of the position you're in. Well, once people see that you are your own, that player is himself a lottery ticket, they want in. Shoe companies, colleges, they all want in. And by suppressing the player to the level of an amateur or literally an unpaid raw material source, everyone can make money but the player or the player's community, and then if you interfere in that, you are punished, as was Christian, as has Kwame. Now Kwame actually, I think he ends up making a more nuanced argument that his entire career was sort of manipulated in this way, but certainly the discussion of it, I would agree, has been manipulated to condemn him, when in reality what they're saying is, don't go straight from high school to the league. You need to go to at least 1 year of college, which they made a law, which seems to me illegal. And you or you have to leave the country to play professionally, because they don't want to mess up this business model that claims these amateur players are getting, in exchange for all of this notoriety and a chance to get to the league, a free education. It's it's a total fraud. So I just wanted to point out, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up with Kwame Brown. Because not only I think what he's doing is, I got to admit, is funny and entertaining, but I think he's actually touching on a major point here. And he kept saying, and even in that clip, why are you sending Stephen A. Smith to universities to talk to college players and high schoolers, or incoming, potential incoming high schoolers, about Kwame Brown? And he brought up a tape where, I mean, again, for 20 years, they've been using him on and off record to make this point. And that what he's saying is, you use me, you go into all these high schools and tell these people, don't be like Kwame Brown, so that they go to the university and turn themselves into money for someone else. And then you go on TV and talk bad about these young black men and boys for your multi-million-dollar careers. So people can get caught up in the name calling and the jokes and the colorism and all of that. And there's stuff to talk about there, but I think he's really pointing at a bigger, more interesting, and the Mama's Cooking joint is hilarious. I mean, he's got, look, for those of you who want to move away from quote unquote anti, gay or homophobic rhetoric, that's not the space. I mean, he's got some, he's got some ideas about manhood and womanhood that I think might need some updating or whatever, but whatever. That's not what I think is the issue here. He's not being criticized because of his any, antiquated ideas. He's being criticized because he becomes a talking point for a multi-billion-dollar company or corporation, and other multi-billion-dollar corporations that talk almost exclusively about sports. I have a note to get into this. I don't really know, coming up on 2 hours here. I don't, maybe we'll come back to this at another time, but it's, to me, maybe because I did all this yesterday. So I kept seeing these parallels. So I saw a tweet yesterday from Max Blumenthal about the continuous claims of a new anti-Semitism. And he suggested this, and he played a clip from this 2009 documentary called Defamation. So I went and found it and watched the whole documentary yesterday. And what Defamation is, it's a documentary made by an Israeli Jew. Basically, it's about how there's an anti-Semitism industry propped up largely by Abe Foxman and the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, to see anti-Semitism where it isn't, so that they can bolster, so they obviously can fundraise, at the time, $70 million operation, and that they can bolster very right-wing foreign policy between the United States and Israel, which, as they talk about in the documentary, there was that book that came out on the Israeli lobby around that time that was saying, written by Gentiles, but that was saying that the Israeli lobby is forcing conservative policies that are anti-Jew, anti-Israel, and anti the United States. But they were derided as anti-Semitic, and this documentary is a pretty funny look at this issue. So he goes all over the place. He goes to obviously New York, but he goes to parts of Europe. He goes to I think he goes to a synagogue in Poland, and he sees these observant Jews, and he asks them, but what about all the anti-Semitism in Poland? And they're like, it's not that big a deal. There's all this discussion of saying, making, don't conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, blah, blah, blah. But the parallel that I'm getting at here with the Kwame Brown story is that there's a segment in Defamation where the filmmaker goes and interviews in New York a Rabbi Hecht. And the reason I remember his name is Hecht is because as a kid, I used to shop at Hecht's department store. And this Rabbi Hecht basically says, essentially he says anti-Semitism is real, but it's not that big a deal. The real issue, he says, is that if you're an entity whose entire purpose and raison d'etre is highlighting and eradicating and fundraising around anti-Semitism, he says you're going to find it everywhere. And he's in Crown Heights. And he made a very interesting point. He said, look, every time a Jew attacks a black person, or every time a black person attacks a Jew, it doesn't mean that they're attacking each other on the basis of their race. They're attacking each other because they're on the basis of them living in a close-knit community on top of one another in a competitive situation. So he said, if a black person, hits a Jew, it's not necessarily because he's a Jew. But his real point was the ADL is looking for anti-Semitism wherever it can find it because it has to raise its money and to promote its political purpose of defending conservative policy that, according to some, isn't even pro-Israeli at the end of the day. And my point is, what Kwame Brown is pointing out is that if your raison d'etre is to make sure that this never-ending crop of black players comes to your college so your multi-billion-dollar industry can continue, then of course you're going to find ways to attack every high school bust and to discourage other high school players from going straight to the league or playing professionally in Europe or elsewhere. Of course you're going to do that. Speaking of Palestine real quick, which is what Israel was invented to manage. That's not what I wanted to show. I don't often do this, but I'll just share this. This actually got some interesting backlash, which I thought was funny. I put this tweet: why don't Palestinians just better engage in financial literacy or use their buying power more responsibly or just start businesses? See how it sounds a little, it should say a little, technically it's a little irrational. So I'm quoting KRS-One there just at the end. Somebody misunderstood that. He didn't say this whole thing, but it's just a reference to that song. See how it sounds a little unrational. Some MCs like to use the word dramatical. Fresh for 88, you suckers. But some people thought I was being unfair and saying that black people have more opportunities than Palestinians, or I'm disrespecting the Palestinian situation even, or and no, I said what I meant, and I meant what I said, and I think what I said is exactly right. That the idea is not to compare or contrast, but to say that there is a solidarity of struggles, and to say that just as we wouldn't look at what's happening to Palestinians and say, oh man, just start a small business, or, you know what I mean, be more financially literate and you can get the Israelis off your back. The Israelis aren't the problem. Your occupation isn't the problem. Just as we would, obviously, nobody would say that. But at the same time, and I understand there's a little more of a nuanced, sophisticated, particular relationship here. But to me, it's equally absurd to use that same argument, as is often the case, to tell Black people how to get out of their situation here. And in fact, as I go on to argue with somebody in this thread, people will specifically criticize my point here so that they can use the worst, quote unquote, the worst condition of Palestinians to justify a Black capitalist nonsensical solution for Black people here. And I see it all the time. People say, man, see, we don't have it. We can't do what the Palestinians can't do what we can do. And that's nonsense. So, similarly, and the last thing I had for today, at least connected to that, was a similar issue, and one of the reasons why. Actually, man, I had a whole bunch more. Actually, I had something else too. Dang. Maybe I'll save that for the remix tomorrow. But I know you all saw this too. A reporter and a Jew was fired by the AP because somebody found old Stanford, her old tweets or whatever from when she was in high school attending something in Stanford. But she had to resign. She got fired from the AP because people claimed that she was anti-Semitic because as a Jew, she stood up and showed some support for Palestinians. And therefore, the AP had to fire her. And I got to say, to credit him, Jimmy Dore pointed out on his show, which I think is funny, that the AP had their building bombed by Israel and still fired a Jewish reporter for being critical of Israelis' abuse of Palestinians. That's deep. I mean, she didn't say anything other than, she was for Palestinian human rights. She said, I was transparent with my editors and they reassured me I would not face punishment for my previous activism. I was told my editors were only hoping to support me as I received an onslaught of sexist, anti-Semitic, racist, and violent comments and messages. Less than 48 hours later, the AP fired me. The reason given was my supposed violation of AP's social media policy sometime between my first day and Wednesday. In that interim, powerful conservatives like Senator Tom Cotton, Ben Shapiro, and Robert Spencer repeatedly lambasted me online. So, anyway. Yeah, that's what I was saying. AP was bombed by Israel. Anyway, yeah, I had something on but I think we can wrap here. I think 2 hours is good. We can bring this up tomorrow on the remix show. Let me just see if I've missed anything. Did I miss anything that I needed to respond to here? I appreciate you. Yeah, man. Global issue. Jewish gentrifier from Long Island, New York is literally occupying my friend's house in Palestine. Wow. Yeah, that's deep, man. I don't know. Well, yeah, honestly, I don't know how they deal with it, or how they're expected to deal with it. Because that is yeah, that's crazy. They missed my irony. That's because Alanis Morissette destroyed the meaning of that word. That's why. I hope you all realize that. She single-handedly destroyed the definite. Do you realize, and we went back and listened to it with my daughters a couple months ago, just to make the point, every single example that Alanis Morissette uses in the song is not irony. Every single example. Rain on your wedding day is not ironic. This is bad luck. That's not irony. Damn it. Seriously, I got a real problem with that. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but I hate it. But that's not irony. So that's why they didn't get my irony. because it's been destroyed. Oh, did he? Charlemagne the God is, he went in on Kwame Brown, and Kwame had a lot to say about him, including asking how is he still on TV after he admitted to drugging and raping somebody. That was the apparent claim. I don't know how accurate that is. But there was at least one article I saw that claimed that Charlemagne acknowledged that he did the Bill Cosby routine on somebody, and I believe she was underage. But somehow that's acceptable. Anyway, listen, I really appreciate all of you coming through this morning and sort of helping us hold this morning audience at these levels. Please do hit the like button, the share button. Please consider joining the channel, at which point you can go see the members only roundtable we did yesterday with Sekou Odinga, Thomas Blood McCreary, and Dhoruba Ben Wahad, formerly of the Black Liberation Army. You've got to see that joint. And patrons at Patreon, you should be able to see that today as well. And those who are supporters of neither, you'll get it. I'm not sure when, but eventually we'll be releasing it to the public. So please do check that out. To anybody, I've reached out to Annie on this issue. Dev, anyone else, anything I've gotten wrong or incomplete, please hit me up and let's continue the conversation. What else? Please come back for definitely the remix tomorrow morning when the full crew is back. And again, I appreciate everybody for their support of Black Power Media. Let's see, Jewish land people still in the crib. They play Black and brown people. Defamation is a funny documentary, by the way, and is very revealing for any of us who don't pay a lot of attention to some of the inner workings. Appreciate you, Tahir. Thank you very much. Ricky says, be nice to Ricky. Right on, Marion. We could say seconds that. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. I think it's a great chat, but I don't think there's anything that I'm needed to add to. Isn't that dramatic irony? No. No, rain on your wedding day is not dramatic irony. Irony is more like sarcasm. So, I mean, with intended comedic effect, it has nothing to do with bad timing or bad luck. Literally, we went through every single example in that song. Not one meets the definition of irony. So the only way that would make sense is if she did that intentionally, which would make the song itself ironic. But I've never seen any evidence of that. I just think she destroyed the joint. She just killed the meaning of that word. And more power to her. These, just colonial languages, whatever. But I'm just saying. All right, good people, please, again, like, share, subscribe, invite a friend, do whatever you can to help build the channel out. Again, shout out to everybody who came through today and who will see this later on. And definitely shout out to the history of the Black Liberation Army that we covered as best we could yesterday. And please go check that out. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning with the Remix Morning Show. To all the good remixers or mix-a-lots. All right, everybody. As always, as Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. We'll catch you tomorrow with the Remix Morning Show. Thanks again.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.